Good afternoon, and today we're going to be taking a look at how to use this math kind of directed whiteboard that you received in your learning bag and how to utilize it in maybe some different ways that you haven't seen before. Today we're going to be talking about estimating and specifically rounding to the tens and hundreds places. But we're going to do a little bit differently. We're going to actually use our number lines and we're going to make them vertical. So we're going to be using a vertical number line instead of the ones that we're probably used to seeing, which are horizontal. Okay, so here we are using our vertical number lines. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm taking these out of some of the Go Math lessons and I'm going to do some rounding. So let's take a number, and right here on the lower line will be the lower number. So in this case, it will be 400. And on the top line, it will be 500. Then in the center of my vertical number line, I'm going to put another hash mark. And that mark is going to be halfway, so 450. And in this example, the number that we're going to be rounding is 425. And so the book might ask, is the number 425 closer to 400 or 500? And this is where our vertical number line comes into play. So we can plot the number 425, which is between 400 and 450. Then we will label this 425. And because we can see that it's closer to 400 than it is to 500, when we round, we're going to round 425 down to 400. We're going to look at another couple ways to do this. Okay, the next number we're going to round is 654. And I'm just writing this over to the side to keep it out of the way and to keep my work area nice and clean. So here I'm going to start, and we're going to be rounding to the nearest hundreds place. So we're going to be rounding to, this is the hundreds place. And so in order to describe this on my number line, I'm going to write 600 on the lower end, 700 on the upper end, and in the middle, 650. Now I'm doing this in color so it's a little bit easier to see. You don't have to do it in different colors just for the purposes of this video. I'm going to plot 654, and I know that 654 is just a little bit greater than 650. So that's where I'm going to put my hash mark, and then I will label it 654. At this point, I can see that 654 is closer to 700 than it is closer to 600. And therefore, when I round 654 to the nearest hundreds place, my answer will be 700. Let's take this one step further with using two number lines to work an addition problem. Okay, for this addition problem, we're going to be using both of these number lines and the bar model. So even though I have this in a vertical orientation, the numbers still work. The problem that I am going to be estimating and then finding the estimated sum is 268 plus 351. Actually, that's the wrong problem I just copied down from the book. I want to do 413 plus 257. So we're going to round and then estimate the sum of these numbers. So my first number, I'm going to put in my first number line, so 413, which means that the base of my number line will be 400, and I'm going to write directly over the top of that 0 that was printed there. And at the top of my number line, I'm going to do 500. And then in about the middle, 450. Next, I'm going to plot 413, which is the number of my first addend, or the top number. And 413 is a bit closer to 400. So it's going to be about right here. I'm going to write 413. And because I see that it's closer to the number 400, I know that I'm going to round down to 400, and 400 will be my first number. Next, I'm going to plot my second number, which in this case is 257. So there at the bottom, I will have 200. At the top, 300. And in the middle, 350. My color coordination is off a little bit. These two numbers should be in black. I will change that really quickly. So in order to keep my color coordination, this will be 300, this will be 200, and in the middle will be 250. What we can do then, in the appropriate color, is plot the number 257, which is going to be pretty close to 250. And even though it's close, 257 is still closer to 300 than it is to 200. So we're going to take 257 and round it up to 300, and 300 will be our second addend. Okay, for this next step, we're going to put them together, and we're going to be using our bar model. But first, we're going to flip, or rotate rather. So the first number that I had was 400. So what I'm going to do is draw about a blue line here and write 400. And just so you can see that this is going to be my 400. And then I take my number, my second number, which we decided we rounded to 300, and I will mark that here as 300. Then, when we add those two together, we will have a total sum of 700, which will be our estimate for our problem. So my original estimate for 413 plus 257, I'll turn it slowly so we don't get seasick. We estimated 400 plus 300 equals 700. And the reason we do estimation is so that we know if our final answer is reasonable or not. If we had our final answer come out as 9,846 and we estimated 700, we would realize that our final answer did not make sense, so we would have to go back and fix our mistakes. So that is one example of using a vertical up and down number line to help us round numbers and create estimates using this type of whiteboard. Next, we're going to go on to some word problems and some strategies to help them make sense. Okay, here we are. I've copied a couple pages out of the Go Math book, and what I've done is I've placed them inside the sheet protector, much like the makeshift chalkboard that you received in your learning bag. So one of the next things, and I just chose a random example, is this word problem. Let's see if I can get this closer for you. And it says, the largest yellowfin tuna caught by fishers weighed 387 pounds. The largest grouper caught weighed 436 pounds. About how much more did the grouper weigh than the yellowfin tuna? There's a lot in there. It reminds me of Nemo and the grouper fish making shapes, and I get a little bit confused, so I need to help organize my thoughts. And the method I use is the CB method. And this will help because as you go along in math, we're going to turn it into the cubes method. But for now, I think we can just start with the CB method. And the CB method is circle the numbers. So we circle the numbers. That's my C. My camera is disagreeing with me. And box the action. So CB, we're going to circle the numbers and we're going to box the action. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is circle the numbers. And the first number that I see in the problem is 387. So I'm going to circle that number. And then the second number I see is 436. So I'm going to circle that number as well. Next, I'm going to put a box on the action words. So there's some secret math action code words that are used, especially in word problems, to give us a clue as to what operation that we should use. In this case, we know it's either going to be addition or plus, or it could be subtraction or minus. So attached to this lesson, there is a scanned page with a bunch of those secret code math action words. And one of them, I will let you know this right now, is how much more. And I'm going to box that because I know that that is my action word. And if I looked on my cheat sheet over here and I say, how much more, that tells me it is subtraction. So I'm going to turn these two numbers and this code action word into a number sentence or a subtraction problem. And when we have subtraction problems, we always need to take the largest number and put it on top. So we have 436. 36. Going to shift that down a bit because I can see we're going to need to do a little extra. 436. Subtract, because my how much more tells me I have to subtract 387. Now, I'm certain you are all rock stars at regrouping. If you need a little refresher, I'm going to, because, well, I need a little bit of refreshers. So I start in my ones place. So I have my ones place on the far right. And then I have my tens place in the middle. So this is the tens place. And then the hundreds place is on the far left. So I look at my ones place and I think to myself, is 6 greater than 7 or is it less than 7? And because it's less than 7, I realize that I can't subtract. So then I move to the tens place and I look at the number 3. Is number 3 greater than number 8 or less than number 8? Well, it's less than number 8. So I have to go over to the hundreds place. And finally, I find one where the number on the top is greater than the number below it. So what we're going to have to do is regroup. And if you don't remember how to do that, that was in last week's video on how we regroup. But I'm going to change out these 4 hundreds. So I have 3 hundreds and 13 tens. And then I can do my first step. So now my hundreds, I can take 3 minus 3 equals 0 hundreds. And I'm like, great. Now I have 13 tens. But wait, the ones are left out to dry. So I have to exchange my 13 tens and exchange them for 12 tens, which will then give me 16 ones. So now I have 12 subtract 8, which is 4, and 16 subtract 7, which is 9. So the question that it said about how much more did the grouper weigh than the yellowfin tuna? So I can say in my nice word response, the grouper weighed 49 pounds more. And that is a nice, beautiful sentence to answer a word problem. We're going to do one more, and then we'll sign off for today. Okay, here we go for our last problem of the day. We're still going to use our CB strategy. C is for circle the numbers, and B is for boxing the action words. So we have our problem, and it says there were 87 sunflowers at the flower shop in the morning. There were 56 sunflowers left at the end of the day. How many sunflowers were sold? And explain a way to solve the problem. So this is chapter 1, lesson 9. I just made a copy to put into the makeshift whiteboard. You're welcome to circle the numbers and box the math action words right in your workbooks. But I am going to circle the numbers. The first number that I see is 87. And then the second number is 56. Next, I go to my page of math action terms, and I look for something that looks familiar. And I don't see the word deduct or fewer, but I do see leftover. And if there were 56 sunflowers left at the end of the day, that sounds a lot like leftover to me. So that I'm going to left at the end of the day. And that is going to tell me, again, that I need to subtract. And I write the little subtraction sign to remind me so I don't forget as I'm doing other things. So, as we discussed before, we're going to take the greater of the two numbers. In this case, it is 87. And I don't even have to think about what I have to do because I've already taken my note that I have to subtract. So I will subtract 56. Again, I like to divide my math problems between the tens and the ones place because it helps me stay organized. And I look at my ones place and I look at the number 7. If it's greater than the number 6, I can subtract. And I have 7 subtract 6 is 1. And 8 is greater than 5, so 8 subtract 5 is 3. And because I like to make my math teacher happy, I like to write my answer in the form of a complete sentence. And the question was, how many sunflowers were sold? And so I can answer in the sentence using this. There were 31 sunflowers sold that day. Or there were 31 sunflowers sold. So that is the strategy. Again, that strategy is the CB, which is circle the numbers. Which is our C. And then we box the action. And that is our CB strategy for word problems. If you have any questions, please contact me through text, email, or Google Classroom. Have a great afternoon.